Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. This is episode 108. Today we will be talking about intergenerational relationships. On Monday, we talked about being caught in the middle. Between your parents and your kids. And oh my goodness, sometimes it's quite a battle when you're in your mid 30s to mid 40s and your parents are getting older and your kids are young or teenagers. Wow, it's a lot to handle. So today we're going to talk about intentionally fostering intergenerational relationships. I can honestly tell you, because I was the eighth of 10 kids, that I did not get to spend very much time with my grandmother and my grandfather. My dad's mama died 3 weeks before I was born, so I never met either one of my dad's parents. My mom's parents lived until I was in my late teens. That's when my grandpa died. And in my early 20s, that was when my grandmother died. But I still didn't get to spend that much time with them. And I think, if anything, I wish that I had had more time to talk to my grandmother, because her life went all the way from the early 1880s, when there weren't even cars around. They still went places in horses and buggies and on trains, all the way to seeing a man walk on the moon. And space travel became kind of normal. She never stepped foot on an airplane in her life. She didn't think those things were safe. I thought that was always kind of fascinating. That is one thing I knew about her. But I didn't get to know her much, and that was a bummer. So here's what I want to say to you today, Mom and Dad. I want you to foster great intergenerational relationships. I had a conversation with my sister the other day, my younger sister. I just have one younger sister and one younger brother. And we were talking about things when we were kids, but then we talked about when we were young adults. We didn't live very far away from each other, lived in the same city, and her children and my children, to this day, are very good friends as adults. And we did our best to foster that. We wanted them to have those kind of relationships with their cousins. And both of us are really excited that they still love each other and care about each other and talk to each other and respect one another. That's really amazing. And actually, my nieces and some of my nephews, they still talk to me. So that intergenerational connection has continued. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to be absolutely certain that even if you have conflicts with your mom and dad, which, let's be truthful, most people have some kind of conflicts with their parents, no matter what, that you can lay aside the things that are problem areas and foster a great relationship between your kids and your parents, and between your kids and your aunts and uncles, and between your kids and your cousins. I just want you to foster great intergenerational relationships within your family. Because you know what? You don't know everything about your mom and dad. And there are things your mom and dad will never tell you that they won't mind telling their grandkids. I know that seems kind of strange, but I also know that it's a fact. When my oldest grandson was about 8 years old and my youngest grandson was 4, I found this really awesome book in a gift shop that I bought for myself. And this book is called Granny, Tell Me Your Memories. Well, since my grandkids call me Granny, I bought that book. Inside were 365 pages, a day, every day of the year, an opportunity to write a memory. And it started off with a sentence or part of a sentence. I remember my first kiss, or I remember as a kid my favorite Christmas, those kinds of things. I filled that book out for my grandkids over a year's time, and the following Christmas, I gave it to them. They still have it. They are 18 and pretty soon going to be 22. So you know what? You need to do something like that. Get something like that for your mom. Get something like that for your dad, and have them fill it out. If you have 2 or 3 brothers and sisters that have kids, you might get your mom and dad more than one copy, or see if you can't find different sets of those kind of books and let your mom and dad start filling them out for your kids. That will foster that intergenerational relationship. See if at least once a month, or maybe even twice, your kids can go see your mom and dad for a whole day or an afternoon, and whatever they like to do. Your dad likes to go fishing, he can take the kids fishing. Your mom likes to go antiquing. They can go take the kids to antique stores. Just whatever, but foster those relationships. Now, this is going to take up maybe a certain amount of time and energy for you, and I acknowledge that, okay? Especially if you have a pretty busy schedule, which most people do, and your kids are taking lessons, and there are all the things going on in life that go on, or your kid's on a sports team. And yet, I really want to encourage you about this because there's such a richness when the generations continue to follow down and show love and show care and share life together. That might include once a month that you have your great Aunt Flora over for lunch in the afternoon on a Sunday, and she can talk to the kids about her life. I'll tell you, as a nurse, this is called reminiscent therapy, okay? In reminiscent therapy, what happens is an older person starts talking about their life as a child. Now, this is really actually extremely interesting to a kid. To know somebody who's 80, which I grant you, it kind of freaks me out. That was in the 1940s. Like, wow, that was not all that long ago in my lifetime. But, for some of you in your 20s and 30s, that might seem like a pretty long time ago. So this person in their 80s, they're telling the kids what it was like when they were little, when they grew up, how they had to stand in line to get bread, or they didn't have any sugar for their cereal because it was rationed during the war. These are things that kids can read on a page that won't make an impact, but they talk to an older person with a little bit of sparkle in their eyes, and they get excited as they tell the story. It makes a massive impact on them, and they won't be forgetting it. So do this, Mom. Do this, Dad. It's a very, very big deal. Okay. I will say this to you. If you don't have a very big family, find one. This is one of my greatest stories on the planet. I love it, and it's not my story. There's a lady, and I'm going to tell you her name because I actually took classes with her. Her name is Judith Baker Montano. She's a very famous embroidery, quilting, thread painting artist. You can look her up and see some of her things. And she said that she used to go to antique stores or junk places or even to garage sales, and she'd find these beautiful old photographs of couples and big families, and she'd buy them, and she'd put them up on the wall in her hall, all down her hall, and people would come over and she'd make up stories. Oh, this is my great aunt so-and-so. She said she kind of like made up her own family because it was fun. I thought that was amazing. I just really thought that was cool. So here's what I'm going to say to you. If you don't have a big family or a family that you get along with well, make your own family. I'm not talking about pretend pictures on the wall. I'm talking about go to someone in your church who's older and say, would you be a part of my family? So that you would come eat dinner with us once a month and talk to my kids about your life or about your childhood. Especially if in your church is an older missionary lady or an older missionary couple, people who have been around the world and had great and fascinating experiences, or someone who was an army nurse and you know about that, because I have a good friend that was. Those are the kinds of people you would really like to adopt into your family that will make an impact on your kids. It's great for your kids to listen to stories from older people and learn what life was like before. Life hasn't always been this easy, and also life hasn't always been this complicated. I mean, there are aspects both directions, and it's an awesome opportunity for your kids to learn and honestly to develop an appreciation for people who are older than themselves. The kids will find out not only that life was pretty incredible, but that life also had hardships and difficulties, and the things those people did to get through those challenges and difficulties, and the way those things shaped those people's characters. So by all means, I want you to develop intergenerational relationships within your family. That also includes your brothers and sisters. Don't assume because someone is your child's aunt or uncle that they are going to have a great relationship. Let's say, for example, your sister is a good painter, but you're not. Well, ask your sister, will you sit down with the kids, one afternoon a month? See, I'm trying to make this really easy on you. It's not a huge, massive, crazy commitment. Just this one afternoon, and show them some things about painting, show them some of your work, talk to them about color and composition and design. Just will you please share your gifts with my children? First of all, that's going to foster a better relationship with you and your sibling because they're going to be really pleased that you asked them that. And it's also going to develop a much closer relationship between your children and their aunts and uncles. So you have a brother and he's really great at woodworking. You can say to him, do you mind if Charlie comes to your shop some afternoon, especially during the summer? And if your child has no affinity for that whatsoever, okay, great. Well, you learned something. But what if he does? Oh my gracious. And your brother's like, oh, you should have Charlie come over once a week or so. You just don't know what's going to develop out of those relationships that you're fostering between other people within your family. Again, if you are an only child, so you don't have any brothers and sisters, even your spouse is an only child. I know a couple of couples that are in this boat. It doesn't mean that you can't look among your peers. So people at work or people in a social organization that you belong to, people at church, sometimes even people in your neighborhood, and say, I don't have any brothers and sisters. My poor kids, they're not going to have any aunts and uncles at all. Would you be their adopted aunt? Would you be their adopted uncle? Most of the time, no kidding, people are going to be pretty complimented by such a request. They're not going to get upset and go, man, I don't know what your problem is. I got enough to handle. I mean, that does occasionally happen, but I'm still telling you that a lot of times people are going to find that to be really complimentary and they're going to be happy to do that. And so look for ways and opportunities for your child to develop really healthy and positive intergenerational reactions and relationships, because those are going to develop empathy and compassion in your kids when they see their great aunt or their grandmother and their grandfather struggling with their health, because they know them and they've heard the stories about when they were young and vibrant and all the crazy stuff they did and some of the interesting stuff they did. They're going to have real compassion for the fact that, oh, Granny, I'm so sorry that your legs hurt, or, oh, Grandpa, I'm really sorry that your hip doesn't work the same. It really develops good things in your kids' character and in the way they see the world. I hope this feels manageable to you. I can really tell you that my kids had very good relationships with my mom and dad. My parents were divorced, so I had to really work at this. And I didn't live in the same state as my folks. This took quite a good bit of effort for me. But I did, in fact, foster those things. My parents died reasonably young. My kids were teenagers when Mama died. My dad even died before her. And yet, they have great memories of times with their grandmother and their grandfather, and they know a good bit about their lives because of the time that they were able to spend with them. I want to encourage you today to make an effort to foster amazing intergenerational relationships for your children and your family members, including quite a number of ones in the older generation as you are able, and have a deeper, richer, fuller life for your children with a much bigger understanding of history and their own personal family history. And I think it will be really beneficial for all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. I will look forward to your emails or your questions or comments. I will see you soon. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.